Hey friends, welcome. I'm Michael from oneskyastrology, and we're going to take a look at this lunar cycle starting on the 15th of November 2020. And in these videos, I like to take a look, a good long look at the new moon, and then look at the sort of the cardinal points of the lunar cycle, which is the waxing quarter, the full moon, the waning quarter, and then we'll take a sneak peek at the next new moon. This lunation starts in Libra on November 14th or 15th, depending on where in the world you are. For me, in United States on Eastern time, it happens between midnight and 1 a.m. So on the 15th, so pretty close to that divide. The full moon will happen on November 30th in constellation Taurus. And it's going to be a really, really interesting moon because the moon will be on Alpha Taurus, or the star Aldebaran, and the sun will be on Alpha Scorpio, also known as Antares. In mainstream astrology, people are talking about a Scorpio new moon and a Gemini full moon. I don't use the tropical zodiac. We're going to take a look at this from the point of view of sidereal astrology, and within that umbrella of sidereal astrology, I use a constellational or astronomical system, generally called true sidereal astrology. So here we have the new moon in constellation Libra, and just to touch on the energies of Libra. Libra is a set of stars that generally imparts an influence that is very interested in truth, very interested in fairness, very interested in justice, balance, kind of higher ideals. It's an idealistic set of stars, and it's very diplomatic and tactful. It's a very kind and sweet influence. It's resonant with the planet Venus, so it's about connection and appreciation of others. It's about relationships and our one-on-one connections. It's not always about romantic relationships. Some of these one-on-one connections can be friendships, business partnerships, even open enemies. So this is really about relating to the other, the any other, in a one-on-one way where we see ourselves reflected and we come to hopefully appreciate that other people have a human experience just like our own, and that through that appreciation of their experience we can develop relationship with them. But again, not limited to that. That's sort of the higher angles of Libra, the higher aspect. Libra is the shadow side of Libra is that it can be just a little naive in its idealism. It can be a little bit in an ivory tower around. And by an ivory tower, I mean it can just be removed from ground level pragmatic reality. It can be so into these ideals of love and peace and justice and truth that it can unfortunately miss some of the harsher realities that we all have to deal with. There are no really important stellar alignments. You may notice if you're observant that the Sun and Moon are making stellar alignments to Alpha Lupus and Beta Centaurus, Hadar, also known as Agena. Neither of those are really significant stars, and they're both fairly well off the ecliptic. So I'm just really going to gloss the stellar alignments for this new moon. I will say that Beta Centaurus is a southern hemisphere star, and it is associated, this degree of the ecliptic is associated by its relationship with Beta Centaurus, with a flow of energies, a bountiful flow of energies, so good movement and high spiritual ideals. And right in line with the idea of high spiritual ideals, we do see a very close sextile to Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is very concerned with the philosophical, the religious, the bigger picture, the sort of worldview aspect of our existence. We do see this relationship here at an angle of 0 degrees and 2 arc minutes. For those who aren't familiar, if you divide each one of these little ticks, little degrees into 60, that would be an arc minute. So we have 2 60ths, or 1/30th, of a degree from exactitude, from being exactly sextile, and that's going to make this relationship very significant, not just for the new moon, but the new moon acts as a sort of natal chart for the cycle. This is an energy that's going to imprint itself on the expression of the entire lunation. We also have Jupiter just having made a conjunction to Pluto here. So that's the third contact of Jupiter and Pluto. And I think that went exact on November 8th. So we're 1 week past that, but that does mean that we have another close sextile between Sun and Moon and Pluto. So here with Jupiter-Pluto in Sagittarius, we tend to see with Jupiter a kind of sense of expanse, of broad, it's a very broadly liberal influence, in that it's very permissive, very jovial, very optimistic, very philosophical. And with Pluto, we usually see deepening and intensification. We usually see some kind of transformation, and we tend to see with Pluto any kind of fears or doubts, any kind of deep unconscious material of a darker nature tend to express itself through the Pluto contact. It seems to be how Pluto transforms, by kind of getting into the depths, the nitty-gritty, and kind of bringing material up for review, and through that process, that psychological process, something transforms. In this case, that transformation could be around our very worldview. Jupiter's the teacher, the guru. This could be about religious or spiritual ideas. And Jupiter is at home in its own stars of Sagittarius, stars that are very resonant with these same sort of expansive, permissive, optimistic, enjoyment-oriented, kind of opportunity-creating set of qualities. And elsewhere in the sky, we have a harmonious semi-sextile to Venus. We have an in conjunction to Eris, and we have a trine to Neptune. We will take a look at some of that later, especially because Eris figures very prominently into some other major configurations of this new moon. Notably, it's very close to an exact square to Pluto. In fact, on the whole, this is the moon pretty blessed by benefic influences in its relationship to Venus, in its relationship to Jupiter, in its relationship really to Jupiter with Pluto. Again, Pluto can be a dark force, but it also does deepen and intensify the qualities of whatever it touches. And in Jupiter's case, we're dealing with the major benefic, the primary blessing giver and door opener opportunity creator in the chart. We are dealing with that Eris square, and Eris and Pluto are a really interesting influence that really Eris is chaos, is the need to recognize the shadow. It is an influence that usually signifies where we aren't looking, what we're sort of othering, what we can be tending to project. Eris is also opposite to Venus, which sits in the degree of the star Spica. And that was where last month's new moon was. So if you remember, Spica, very, very broadly benefic star, just a very fortunate, good influence that tends to bring out the higher angles of whatever it is in contact with. In Venus's case, that's great. Venus tends to be about appreciation, our values, love, romance, relationship, and Venus is the dispositor of this new moon in that it rules or is associated with the stars of Libra. So having Venus well placed on Spica is, again, pretty broadly blessed, pretty broadly benefic, and that will be a factor, again, that pervades the entire cycle. I do want to make note that this T-square formation, where Pluto is T-squaring the Eris-Venus opposition, is really interesting. Pluto and Eris first went conjunct, first went square, exact, in January 2020 at the basically the time of the emergence of COVID. And right around that time, Saturn was part of that configuration too. It was very close to being conjoined with Pluto. So Saturn and Pluto were together at that time, and Eris was squaring them from Pisces. And throughout this year of 2020, I think a lot of the chaos that we've seen, a lot of the confusion and disorganization, disorder, and general ignorance has been a product of the square of Eris to everything that's happening here with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto in Sagittarius. And this has just been a worldwide effect in Sag. Sag's very broad, tends to be a broad influence geographically. It tends to be very global. And Eris in Pisces is especially confused. Pisces is, for all its good qualities, for all its insight, forgiveness, very Pacific set of stars, it tends to be confused. It's not a very well thought out influence. It's very intuitive, but it leans towards confusion and delusion at times. So when we have Eris Pluto, we have a sort of duality. We have out of this sort of condition where, out of confusion, Eris in Pisces, and fear, Pluto in Sag, we have the square relationship, which tends to be expressing itself as obstacles, which are not associated with anyone's fault or any wrongdoing, but are just situations in life that we need to navigate. And what I've seen is that out of fear and confusion, people are retreating sort of back into their own philosophical standpoints, their viewpoints. A lot of people have sort of painted themselves into the corner of their own point of view. And what seems to be happening is that they're doubling down on that point of view and blaming others, or really anyone else, for their problems. And you know, I see this from all sides in all disputes, just very broadly this year. I see it's been very easy to do that, and that particular confusion I see as a really textbook expression of an Eris-Pluto square. Eris is really where we need to be looking. It's where we need to recognize what isn't being recognized. Eris is an influence that has profound potential because it's generally where our treasure is hidden. So demonizing Eris is not the point here. All planets have their higher angles and their lower angles, their positive aspects and their negative aspects. And with Eris, the potential to recognize the chthonic aspects of our psyche, the sort of underground or hidden aspects of our psyche, is always part of Eris's placement and expression in a chart. So when I see Eris opposite Venus on Spica, especially giving its blessing to this, you know, I see a time when it's really possible to take a look at our unexamined prejudices and what we have a hard time appreciating, Venus, our unconscious material, Pluto and Eris, and being able to love the others, this part of ourselves that we're othering and we're projecting onto others and then blaming, and being able to love ourselves for all of our darkness and all of our flaws and our confusion and our vulnerability. Being able to appreciate that human condition of being and creatures with a soft underbelly that's kind of constantly exposed, if you will. It's a very weird thing, being human. And I think this could be a great opportunity to come to greater appreciation of our commonalities and our shared vulnerabilities. And that Venus, as it square Pluto and Jupiter together, is also square to Jupiter. And this is going to be the first of several kind of indulgent, hedonistic, pleasure-seeking influences that are prominent in this chart. Libra per se isn't an overly hedonistic set of stars, but when you get Venus square to Jupiter, you really have a kind of follow your bliss kind of influence, and that Jupiter is intensified, strengthened by Pluto. Venus on Spica may have available to itself a little more wisdom and discretion, and Saturn's placement here with Jupiter, conjoined by constellation, conjoined by degree, is definitely going to bring a little bit of discipline, reserve, and ability to control ourselves. But there are more than one sort of indulgent influences. And so I just want to caution everybody to look out for excess. Look out for excess pleasure-seeking, kind of ego gratification influences. It's kind of like if it feels good, do it. Might make a lot of sense right now. But I do advise control, restraint, some degree of caution if you are a person who's subject to those influences especially. We have Neptune and Aquarius trine up to the new moon and sextiled by Jupiter, Pluto. And this can indicate a chance to kind of envision Neptune, a kind of maybe higher possibilities, Aquarius, of this sort of swiftly changing situation. Pluto with Jupiter and Saturn is the changing structure of the world, if you will. And in Sagittarius, this is very global. So bringing all that into one idea, we could have a way to, an opportunity to envision this rapidly changing world with some degree of optimism. You know, hopefully with Pluto, Jupiter together, with great optimism. and in accord with our idea of the highest good. That's the influence of the stars of Aquarius. And there's also a great alignment here between Mercury in Virgo, which it's associated with. It's very much at home in its own stars in Virgo, and Uranus, which is on Alpha Aries, the star Hamal. And Uranus and Mercury, when you get them together, very much have higher orders of thought, access to brilliance, access to insight, access to deep knowledge, ancestral knowledge, access to the collective unconscious, to the deep subconscious, to the genius, our sort of higher functioning mentally. So any kind of inspiration or ideas that may be arising out of this alignment may especially have to do with Aries' theme of recognizing our personhood, recognizing our healthy ego and our healthy ego boundaries, what drives us, what motivates us, what gets us up in the morning and gets us doing those things to meet our needs and our wants. So the new moon is a time of low energy. It's a time to plant the seed. And we're going to be looking forward to the whole chart when we think about the seeds we want to plant, especially to the full moon. That new moon, full moon axis is always, the basic crucial expression of a lunation. And in this case, I want to advise that if there are any issues with this changing world, political, financial, structural, institutional, anything that's unresolved, anything that is, and I think this has all been tilting so swiftly that there's almost all of us have, some material to work with on that front. I don't know if anyone's really square with this situation yet, but this is a great time to plant the seed of intention, to do our best, to remain optimistic, to see both sides of any dichotomy, not to project, not to other, but to plant the seeds of seeing both sides of any outstanding issues. And that's the balance that Libra wants to bring. It wants to bring the ability to see from both perspectives, or broadly all perspectives, especially sextile to Jupiter and Sag. This is really and for that matter, trying to Neptune in Aquarius. Aquarius is very oriented to pattern recognition, fitting things into their place, finding the place and putting the pieces together. Sag is very concerned with the big picture, very concerned with broad strokes, philosophy, again, religion, spirituality, worldview, big picture stuff. And Libra wants to really take all this into consideration and develop a fair and balanced opinion of it. There are several significant influences indicating strong passions, indicating excess, indicating the opportunity for hedonism. I will go over those. We have Venus square to Jupiter. We have Venus opposite Mars. It's a very dynamic aspect associated more with strong passions than with hedonism or excess. But a lot of dynamic tension there between the masculine and feminine aspects of the psyche and of each other. Just gets strong in combination with Mars square to Pluto, which does bring out a lot of drive, a lot of force, a lot of energy. And with Uranus, the explosive planet of change and upheaval on Hamal, the head of the ram, Alpha Aries, the forceful star, we could really see a lot of energy expressed around strong passions and indulging ourselves. So I want to caution everybody just to set the intention to just navigate those skillfully. You know, I'm not necessarily a moralist, and I don't have anything against strong passions, but I do caution that they can cloud, and they can cloud the consciousness and obscure oftentimes other avenues which may be towards the highest good. We can get ourselves into trouble following strong passions and a hedonistic influence. So just navigating those skillfully and with awareness would be the intention I would advise to set. As always, you'll have your own relationship with this, and you can, come to your own conclusions. I'm really just here to translate the chart. And keeping in mind the fruit that'll blossom when this full moon is happening, that will be harvested right about when the moon is on Aldebaran and the sun on Antares. Moon in Taurus and sun in Scorpio this is about wealth and our assets. It's about hard assets like money and property. It's about all kinds of assets, whether you're talking about intangible assets like skills, talents, blessings, anything that has value. Talking about our inner sense of values and what we find valuable in life. So not just hard assets, not in any kind of narrow way are we looking at this, but it's about what we have, Taurus, and what we share, Scorpio. And Scorpio is really about transforming in order to bring about greater stability, Taurus. That's what the Scorpio-Taurus axis is about. And we'll look at that when we get to the new moon, to the full moon. But with a new moon in Libra, at this time on November 15th, we can, or 14th, depending on where in the world you are, we can set intentions that are going to take root in our deep mind and blossom throughout the progression of this lunar cycle. That's really the best way to work with lunations, is to be in some kind of harmony with your own natural cycle, of high and low energy, of going within in a quieter way at the time of the new moon, of doing the work through the waxing phase of achieving, of harnessing that high energy, that maximum energy of the full moon, and then through the waning phase, just resting, appreciating, gathering, reflecting, preparing, making way for that next new moon. And this is a very powerful way to live. This is very powerful to tap into. You can really put a lot of wind in your sails and begin to move forward in life. And again, this full moon is going to be about assets. But before we get to that, I want to look at the waxing quarter moon. And for the waxing quarter, we have the sun just finishing up Libra on the cusp of Scorpio. And it is, of course, square, exactly square to the moon, which is placed in Aquarius, conjoined by sign with Neptune. We do see this moon in pretty close trine to Venus. And so moon in Aquarius could be a time of the unexpected emerging. This is the waxing quarter moon is often the time when the intention that we planted at the new moon is first expressing. It's kind of like the first little sprout comes out of the ground, that seed that we planted. And the tree hasn't come to its harvestable point yet, but we can see what kind of tree it is. And this could be something unexpected. Aquarius has a long-standing and well-deserved reputation for surprising us. The Sun remains in semi-sextile, very harmonious relationship to Venus, and is in the stars of Libra, and is actually Saturn and Jupiter. Jupiter's pretty fast moving at this point, came out of retrograde and is now moving forward rather quickly. So the Sun is actually still in sextile with Jupiter. If you notice, not an overly close sextile, almost 6 degrees, which is very wide. But what's important is that the Sun and Jupiter will be moving in sextile throughout this whole week-long phase, from the 15th, 14th, and 15th to the 22nd of November. We'll have Sun and Jupiter in sextile. So this is a great time to focus on the opportunities that are presenting themselves as Jupiter moves away from Pluto and towards Saturn for that great conjunction coming up December 21st. Really looking here at chances to maximize opportunity, take advantage of doors that may have opened for us, engage in new ventures, contemplate things in a new light, just hold things in a different way, being open, especially with the Moon in Aquarius, to any changes. This first cycle of this lunation is likely, for the reason of Jupiter and Saturn, to be dealing with themes of the structure of power in the real world, the brick and mortar world, of institutions, of finance, of just everything, society, the structure of society in the real world. And we do have Mars making a close aspect, a minor aspect, but we have Mars making 15 arc-minute aspects to the luminaries, both of them, where we have a semi-square to the Moon and a sesquiquadrate to the Sun. This could bring confusion from Pisces, especially conjoined Eris. It could possibly bring aggression. I wouldn't say that Pisces is an overly aggressive set of stars. It is quite the opposite. But Mars, in a confused way, can often be overly assertive, even aggressive. I just want to say this is also heightened by the square to Pluto, which is still active. Mars is square Pluto, and again conjoined Eris here. So Mars in Pisces is it gets subdued in Pisces. It's not strong in Pisces, but for that reason there can be an uphill battle with Martian expression, with that expression of our masculine side, and with the expression of our drive. If anything, I wouldn't expect to see violence here, but I would expect to see our drive, our motivation, our libido, our just sense of motivation to be possibly confused, perhaps a little subdued at that time. And without dwelling on this chart, I think I covered everything that I want to cover on that. Let's move to the full moon. Like I said, very interesting full moon. We have we're close enough to the nodes here. We're close enough with the luminaries to the lunar nodes that we're going to experience, it's part of the world anyway, mostly in the northern hemisphere, we'll experience a penumbral eclipse, which is when the moon enters into the penumbral cone of the Earth. It's not really fully eclipsed at this time. I have a picture here of a penumbral eclipse, and what happens is it just darkens. You can see this shadow here. This is an example of a photo. Thank you, NASA, for for this photo. It's a great example of the shadow of Earth without actually any eclipse. So we will be in the realm of you could call it a partial. It's not a partial eclipse. It's a penumbral eclipse. It's a pseudo eclipse. That said, that's not what's important about this full moon. What's important is, again, the sun on Antares opposing the moon on Aldebaran. This is a very highly charged, extraordinarily dynamic alignment. With Antares, you have a really notoriously pugnacious, forceful, transformative, at times violent influence. It's very powerful, but it needs balance. It's a forceful transformer, and it's going to be casting its light across to be reflected directly by that moon on Aldebaran. Aldebaran is auspicious for gain. It's auspicious for security. Aldebaran is auspicious for even luxury. It's a steady accumulator. It's a steady accumulator. So if Antares is a forceful transformer, Aldebaran is a steady accumulator. And that's the axis here. That's the axis. We're looking at transformation of the nature that is going to likely express itself as movement towards security, movement towards material security. We also have Pluto and Eris configured very closely. They're approaching their third square, and they will square 5 times. Pluto and Eris, they're slow-moving planets, so they're going to be they're going to go back and forth in retrograde motion. They will square 5 times. So this is the middle square. And the middle square is like the second square when there are 3 contacts, and the first is just the introduction of the idea, and the second is the actual manifestation of the thing itself, and then the third is the integration as the energies move out. In a contact that has 5 exact alignments within that, we're dealing with the very middle one. So it's like that second contact in a usual square. Again, because these are slow moving outer planets, we're going to be dealing with 5 contacts through the end of 2021. November 2021, November 24th, count it down, 2021. These planets will move out of degree of influence, one degree of orb of each other for the last time, until they will conjoin. Pluto is the faster moving of the 2, and they will likely conjoin. I don't know when, but I was born under the Pluto-Eris opposition 43 years ago. So quite likely in 43 years, Pluto will swing around to conjoin Eris. Maybe in Aries or Taurus. I haven't looked at that. Yet, so I'm speculating. I was wildly speculating. I have no idea where that will happen. Without saying too much about what will happen in 43 years, I want to say right at the time of this full moon, this very dynamic, highly charged full moon, I would expect a high degree of chaos. I would expect problems that are nobody's fault and obstacles that arise very naturally. Again, the first contact here, the introduction of the idea of Pluto square Eris, January 2020. You can do the math. There was a lot of other stuff happening in January 2020, including the great Saturn-Pluto, Sun-Mercury conjunction in Sag. There's not the only explanation for the COVID or the chaos of this year, the social upheaval, the move towards more authoritarianism, more deeper divide. With Pluto, you always have dichotomy. Pluto is a dual planet, Pluto Charon. And there's always a dichotomous aspect. So the chaos of Eris combining with the dichotomous, the sort of I want to say there's a lot of fear with Pluto. We're dealing with fears, we're dealing with manipulation, we're dealing with issues of control. We're dealing with the unconscious, just the deepest drive, the soul urge with Pluto. All of this is very close to square and it'll need to be navigated. So let's remember that when setting our intentions for this cycle. When the sun is in constellation Libra, back on November 14th, 15th. And remember to anchor the intention to stay grounded and realistic, because the confusion, the dichotomy, the duality, the separation from, really what's real and important, here the potential for that is very high. There's a very high potential for religious and spiritual disorder or philosophical confusion, especially around Pisces idealism with Eris here. In Pisces, in the philosophical bent of Sagittarius, this square so close to exact just could create difficulty in that arena, that area of life. Look at the waning quarter. Waning quarter will take place in Leo, late Leo, as the moon enters its waning square with the sun. This is a time to sort of take stock of the lunar cycle. Hopefully since that full moon on Aldebaran, we've been enjoying ourselves. We've been hopefully experiencing some new gains, some new opportunities, some just nice things. I hope for everyone that if you can appreciate your own opportunities here, that you can appreciate that this is a time where a lot of people might be moving in that direction, and you can have that appreciation, Venus, for others' experience with the sextile of the moon. That's likely to be very possible. Venus sextiles are very positive. It's Venus's sort of best aspect. And we have sextile to the moon, sextile to Pluto, and a Pluto trine to moon. Venus in its own stars of Libra too is going to be accentuated here. So hopefully there will be just a time of some ease and some appreciation. The moon is opposite to Neptune as it finishes up Aquarius. And, we need to be wary of confusion and dreamy attitudes, overly idealistic, overly deluded, especially escapist attitudes at this time. But on the whole, I think a good chart, a good influence for reflection, a good chart for beginning to make our way towards the next new moon. You will notice Pluto and Eris coming about as close on one of the cardinal points as they're going to come to exact square. We're 5 arc minutes away at this point, so it's just looming there. It's pretty challenging influence. Again, a great time to explore what we've been keeping from ourselves, what we've been hiding from ourselves, where our trapped power, our locked power is in the unconscious realm, and to explore it, to release it through inner work, through meditation, through inviting experiences that reflect back to us, that show us how we can explore these hidden aspects of ourselves. We have Jupiter and Saturn probably 1 degree apart. Where are we? 1.5 degrees. Yeah, so we're at 1.5 degrees of separation here. Jupiter is at this point pretty well moved away from Pluto, although Pluto will still exert influence from that distance. We're basically at this point, 7th of December, we're in the beginnings of the Great Conjunction. The Great Conjunction will happen almost exactly on the border of the constellations of Sag and constellation Capricorn. And next lunar cycle, we'll take a closer look at that. It'll go exact December 21st, 2020, and this will be a new beginning, a sort of new moon, if you will, a time of the beginning of a new phase in the structure of power and the structure of society, especially affecting finance, institutions, and very, very broadly, the real world, the world of brick and mortar, of coin and money, of the movement of power, temporal power. And with that, I want to turn to the next new moon. We'll take a look here. Next new moon looks nice. As Jupiter and Saturn move closer together, this is kind of the main event. Although this is not the only event, this is definitely a big event. We're lent a sextile from Venus, which again, very auspicious from Venus's home stars of Libra. The new moon will happen in late Scorpio in the stars of Ophiuchus, right on the degree of Ras Al Hag, which is the head of Ophiuchus, the head of the snake charmer in Arabic, or the head of the healer, the head of the serpent bearer. So the guiding wisdom of this thing, the head of that which steps on the tail of the scorpion. Also these stars, Shaula, Lambda Scorpius, which is the stinger, the poisonous part of the scorpion. So we may very well be looking at a choice. We may very well be looking at another dualistic expression. Scorpio Ophiuchus is definitely the stars. Definitely, this is actually open to some debate, and that debate goes on. In my humble opinion, it's the stars of Pluto, Charon, the dual planet of Pluto, and it's very large relative to Pluto. Moon, Charon, although Pluto is very small relative to other planets. Pluto is about the size of our moon. If that was confusing, what does matter is that these are the stars of Pluto, and that Pluto will be in Sagittarius, where its dispositor, Jupiter, is also in Sag. So Pluto here, a very powerful alignment, in short. There's a lot of power here. With those stars, we have a lot of power. With Pluto conjoined to Jupiter, Saturn, we have a lot of power. And we have trines. Strong trines up to Eris, which is square to Pluto. And we may be looking at a lunation that offers us a lot of opportunity. A lot of opportunity. But we will get into that next month. And next month we will look at the chart of the exact alignment of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, because this time around I believe it's a one contact. I think it's just one contact. I don't think there's going to be retrograde motion for multiple contacts. I think December 21st, 2020, it's a one and done. So very intense. Looking forward to that. So when we're in the waning phase, and we're making our way, preparing for the next lunation, we really want to clear a lot of space for this one. This is an eclipse too. You may have noticed the lunar nodes. It's going to be a full eclipse actually, let me check that. I am not sure if it's going to be full or, very, very, very close to fullness, but partial. I have to look that up, but I do want to encourage everybody to make a lot of space and to let as much go, as you can here in mid-December. All right, my friends, I think that does it. Thank you, as always, for staying with me. We're gonna get through this, and I'll see you next month. Goodbye.